Are you ready to take your Notion skills to the next level? In this video, I'll show you 3 game-changing ways how you can level up your buttons in Notion. These techniques will make your workflows smoother, faster, and fully automated. Let's dive in. Okay, so first we'll do a quick overview and then we'll do a deep dive into each one of these. Number 1 is using a custom variable to pass information. This allows us to take information from one page and insert that into another page. Like taking an existing link from one page and applying that to another. But it doesn't stop there. If you can do that once, why not do it multiple times to create a fully planned deliverable with one click? You can now even set due dates for all these tasks and subtasks automatically. But doing things automatically is already nice. But what if you can also validate user input in your workflow? What if there's a way to show the user which properties you should have filled before proceeding? Wouldn't that be awesome? And I realized that this might all be a bit theoretical, so in the end I'll show a real-life example with lots of extra tips and tricks, so I'm sure it's worth sticking around for that. Alright, we're in Notion. I can already hear you thinking, finally. So, I've got a basic deliverable task, subtask system, nothing special. Let's start by adding a deliverable. That is step 1. And then to that deliverable, we'll be adding a complex task. A complex task is a task where you can already also add subtasks. Let's do that. Right? So we see the deliverable is connected to the task. Now, let's add a subtask here. Okay, so now the deliverable is not connected. Let's see why that is. Because if you want to add a deliverable here, we would normally choose this task or do it with a filter. But this task is not a deliverable, it's task. So we cannot do it like this. So how do we now do it? We add an action, we define a variable. This variable we will name deliverable. Alright. And then we can add a formula here. And we can say this page dot deliverable. So we can actually reach the link of this page. And we can use that. So we'll save that. And then we have to move it up. Because we obviously have to define the variable first. And then we can use it. And then in deliverable, we see that this deliverable variable has appeared. So we can now insert that as a link in the deliverable linked property. So let's give it a try. All right, it's linked. So this actually wasn't possible in the past. So this is a great improvement. And you can already imagine this amount of stuff that you can do with this. But we can also go a step further. And I'll quickly show it to you, and later on in the real life example, we'll dive a lot more deeper into this. So actually, when we go, when we go into this formula, we can not only say this page dot deliverable, but we can go even deeper. We can say dot filter, and then we can say the current dot. And now we are actually inside the properties of deliverable. So we can actually reach the status of the deliverable, or the department, or the due date. And we can actually take that information and also insert it into this page. So we can take the status or the deliverable date, the end date. We can put that into this task and put that in a date field. So you can already imagine the amount of possibilities that you have for this. So it's good stuff. More to come in the real life example. Right, so we'll take this out. And then we say done, and one more test. Yep, it works. Off to the next one. Right, back to our starting point. So we see that a magic button has appeared, but well, maybe it hasn't appeared magically, I've created it, but when you click on it, it might feel like a bit of magic. So let's see what happens when you click on it. Alright, so we see it creates a deliverable, and to the deliverable it has connected 7 tasks. And if we scroll down, we see that actually these 9 tasks were created. It has a responsible person, the due dates have been planned in, everything is connected with different templates. So this is basically a template of a deliverable that has been applied. So you can already imagine how much time you can save if you use the same template every time. So if you always create YouTube videos and you have the same structure, you have about the same date range that this happens in, then you can easily create these template deliverables. So let's have a look at how I created this. So what I did first, I made a bit of a structure. So I thought of which task do we have to create, how long does it take, what are the end dates, etc. And then just build this up. So I can easily now put this into a button. So let's see how we did that. So take this away and clean this up a bit. As I always like to keep things clean. Then we go back to deliverables. And we delete this one as well. Alright. So we have this magic button and let's expand it. Okay. So we see all these steps. So each task added is basically a step. And you can do different things for each step. So obviously the first step is creating the deliverable, and then we added a date range and we said date range from the date triggered to 30 days from now, so that range is 30 days. So that's clear. And then you see a custom variable is already created here. So in this scenario, when you create a task and then a new task, then Notion already knows that you've created something in a previous step and already creates a variable to use that in the next step. So it knows in step 1 I've created the deliverable, so if I want to add that to the deliverable, I can just choose the variable page added in step 1. So I basically do that for all tasks that we have to create. So the deliverable is in all steps is the page added in step 1. And if you then create a next page, then you can also use that in subsequent pages. So let's say in this complex task we have the deliverable obviously, and we have subtasks. And these subtasks are going to be sub-items of a parent item. So for this sub-item you can say the parent item is the page added in step 5. So that would be this page. So for creating visuals, let's go back to our overview. So we have the task is create visuals, and 2 subtasks create video visuals and create the thumbnail. So we see create visuals is the main task, and then we see both the parent item of both these tasks is the page added in step 5. And then of course you can also give it a date range and say from day 7 up until day 14. And so this whole button is built up like that. So it doesn't really have that much difficult stuff in there. It's just a matter of structurally adding the pages, connecting the right parent pages, the right deliverable, and then you're set. So I don't think it would be even too long to create this. So I think it's good stuff. Okay, so now let's up it a bit and try to validate something. So how would we use this in a real life example? So I've prepared this in our new YouTube video deliverable. So let's say we go into this create visuals task. And we have a button here on the bottom that says finalize task. So when this task is done, you can click finalize. It will add a date finished to the date finished property, and it will go back to another page. So, but when these subtasks are not yet finished, I don't want people finalizing this task because there are still subtasks open. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't, that's arbitrary, but in this case, I don't want it. So let's click on this task. Okay, so we get a warning. There are open subtasks and 2 tasks are still open. Now, when I finalize these 2 tasks, and it says, okay, subtask finalized, move on, you can do whatever you like. So I think this is a very powerful thing to add to buttons. So you can actually give the users feedback like, okay, do not proceed from this point, or you shouldn't. You can, but you shouldn't. So let's see how we did that. So actually in your confirmation message, you can also use a formula. So you can say, okay, you can add a text, add some line breaks, and then you can show a property. So what I did, I created a little helper property that checks if all the subtasks are finished or not, and gives me different feedback in different scenarios. So then I just have to show this field. This always shows, okay, is it finished? And if it's not finished, let's clear one of these. Then it shows, okay, open subtask, and this is the status of the tasks. And you simply just add it to the button, and that's it. So I think you can already start imagining the possibilities that you have for this. If you have a property that you want filled, if you have link properties of link properties that you want filled, you can check everything. You can make it visual here. The only thing that I'm hoping one day Notion will add is that you can also check what's inside the template, but that's a step too far. So, but you can at least check if things that you want in your process properties filled, you can check that. So I think this is a very powerful feature. So after the real world example, so I think that's good stuff. So stick around for that. It's going to have a lot of extra tips and tricks, and I'm going to take a bit more of a deep dive in some of these features. So stick around. And before I forget, if you like the videos that I create, please like and subscribe to keep informed. And if you have some quirky use cases, leave them in the comments so everybody can enjoy them. So, right, let's go. Okay, the real world example. Supplier management. I've chosen this example because this is a really manual process that requires a lot of explanation to a user. That you have to create a supplier and then add an onboarding task to it, and when you close an onboarding task you have to add a review task and you have to follow that process. So that was a really labor extensive process where you had to do a lot of explanation. But now with these improvements we can do a lot more without the user having to know stuff. So let's get into it. So first, onboarding a supplier. And you already probably recognize now that we are creating 2 pages at the same time. So we are creating the supplier on the left side and the onboarding task on the right side. So we can start by saying test 1, supplier, doesn't really matter the name, test 1. I would go through this process. It's already planned in, so it's planned in 14 days from now. You can just fill in, it says, okay, fill in required database fields. So we'll do that, and then you can already see that when you press finalize that we check if these requirements are filled. So this one wasn't filled yet, and now everything is filled. The only thing I have to do now is finalize and plan review. I see that all the required fields are done, so that for process wise that's fine. And I can just finalize the task, and what happens now already is a new review is planned in. So basically the user doesn't even have to know that he has to plan in a new review. It's automatically done when he finalizes his onboarding tasks. So that's awesome. And then when this review is due, you just do your review, fill your points, and then you have to fill your supplier review, satisfied, and then it's okay, and then the next review is planned in, and it's automatically planned in based on this review frequency. So it calculates 90 days from that last review. So if we would change this to 365 days and I would do this review, Let's say we are not satisfied right now. Let's give that a second to load. And then if we say finalize and plan review, then you see that the next review is planned 365 days from now. So I don't have to tell the user you have to calculate or look for a field where that next review date is calculated. I have that field here, but the user doesn't even have to know anymore. So I think that's great stuff. So let's go through the buttons and see what the improvements are and how I did that. So we have onboarding a supplier. This was the normal button, so we just create supplier. That was it. And now with this added variable, we can add you can add the onboarding task in one go. So with this variable, we can connect it to the supplier, add it in page 1, and we can also open it the way we like it. Supplier on the left hand in full view, and in the side peek the onboarding task. So you already have like a great way of working. So that's also awesome. Then we go into the supplier and we'll go into that onboarding task and see how that button looks. Let's see, we'll go to all tasks, the onboarding task. Let's see. Okay, so here we have the confirmation message. So we're checking if the fields that are necessary for the onboarding, if they are filled. So that's already great. And we're also checking if the name of the supplier is not the standard one, because we don't want the default name, obviously, because else they are all going to have supplier name as name. And I'm doing this with a helper field here to see if all the required fields are filled. So I have that field here. I get that from the supplier database. I do some checks, and then I give it a green check mark if it's filled, and if not, it gets an X. So I can just put in that field. But as we saw earlier in the video, we can also extract that directly. So we can say plus, and then we'll just put a line break in here as well. And then we can say supplier dot map, and then the current dot, and we can say you can take the classification as an example. So we can take that out. So now let's see what happens. Okay, so now the classification is shown here. So now you could potentially do an if-else statement and say if it's empty, then I show an X and say you have to fill this field. Or I can say if it's filled, if it's not empty, I can say a check mark and high or classification, as I did here. So I think this is definitely awesome stuff. So next, we add a trigger date, a finish date. We add a status, and here we get out the review before date. So that's a whole video on its own, that review before date, and how to get that out. But that's also not the purpose of this video. I just want to note that you can use that date to fill in the next review date. So it's calculated based on the review frequency and the last review or onboarding date, and then it calculates the new review date. And we put that variable in task from 2. And then we go back to the supplier page, and that is it. And basically the review, let's see if we can get out a review as well. I think that's pretty similar to the end of the onboarding, because obviously you're already planning a new review. So that, yeah, that looks basically the same. So then a few extra tips and tricks. You see this back button here. Because I can define the variable supplier now, I can make a back button to my supplier. Because I was always working in that onboarding task and then adding subtasks to it, and then your back button doesn't work anymore, and you're looking for a way to get back to that supplier, to go back to that task. Yeah, there's often not a quick way. You can go into the properties, but that's not the first place that I look. So now you can actually build a button for it. So that's a great thing. And a similar thing is Open Like a Pro. Because I like to work in this way, I like to have my supplier on the left side open and my task on the right side. But if I open this as a whole and I start adding some tasks here, and then I want to go back, then that usually doesn't work that well anymore. So then I can have my Open Like a Pro button, and then I have it opened again as I like to work. So I think that's about it. So if you would like to see more of this content, please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one.